that, do the best job at that. Okay. So I think just with possibly slightly shorter time. What time are we finishing, by the way? Just to check how long. Do we have 15 more minutes? Or
I think we've got a little bit more time. We were saying 1:15.
Okay. I'll do my best. We may just get through one or two principles, but that's fine. So no, the summary of telling you my shortened life story was there was a couple of key points from that. One was to go to any Keystone events that you get invited to, because you don't know kind of where that night's going to go. For me, it led to the company that I worked with for 6 years, and also kind of like the jumping off point for starting my own company and building up this regenerative practice as well. And the other is the point of kind of telling those stories about the things that happen with Tūhoe is just, I just strongly recommend kind of showing initiative and maybe going above and beyond in areas that genuinely interest you. So I guess there's only so many hours in the day. If you are early on in your career and you want to direct your career in a certain way, then if you put in the effort in the areas that genuinely interest you, you could kind of start to build up something that you really love, that excites you and that sort of thing. So that was kind of some of the point of sharing those. So I popped in our little board a couple of regenerative project examples that we are working on and have worked on. And so I thought the benefit of just popping in the links is that you can hop back and have a look and do further reading as you like. But I will just briefly touch on them. So one is Te Whakaorango Te Puhunui, which is the regeneration strategy for Te Puhunui, which was the most degraded awa or stream and catchment in Tamaki Makaurau. And so this is one of actually all three of these projects, which is interesting, are Ekipanuku projects. But the benefit of having a look at this page, which was the first link, is that this has been running for about 6 years now. And so there are a lot of supporting resources. Oh, can you still see my screen? Can you see my screen at all?
No, we can't.
No.
We're just using the Miro board.
Okay. I see. Well, I'll share my screen. It's a good idea. So this is this first link here. Sorry. Zoom back a bit. So now we're here to these links to regenerative project management project examples. So the first link here was the one that I was talking about, Te Whakaorango Te Puhunui. And if you scroll down, this is a really good one to kind of keep in mind if you're wanting to understand a bit more about regenerative practice and see some examples. Is if you scroll down, there's all of these like publicly available supporting resources, which are really great. So you can watch like an introductory video, or there's a summary document that you can read, or you can get into, I think this is like more than 200 pages, but you can get into reading a few different things and come to know like a good example of a project really well. And then another one that I have on here is, so this was a whole, the regeneration of a whole water catchment. And then the second link is the link to a project that was kind of born from the broader program for the whole water catchment, and it's the regeneration of just a part of the awa, part of the stream. And so this one's called Te Akarata. And so I just thought it might be helpful for people that are wanting to understand a bit more about regenerative practice, about something that happens at a broader program scale, but then also something that just happens on a defined site. So this is a defined sort of nearly 8 hectare site that's been purchased for the first focus of the kaupapa is about the regeneration of the stream. So that one is a little bit more of a watch this space type link because it's a bit earlier on. But probably the most, what I think would be quite worthy of people's time if you're interested in regenerative practice and regenerative projects, is having a look at the Te Ara Tukutuku project web page, which was just launched on Monday this week. And also there's a live AK Have Your Say open at the moment, so like a live public engagement in response to this. So sometimes if you you know, have a read through project pages like this, you know, you're just kind of reading for yourself, but it might be worthwhile for, you know, if you're a student or actually anybody wants to read about a regenerative project with in mind that you can provide feedback and it'll be used for something real, then this is a good one to have a look at. So it's just got the project page here. So this is the regeneration of what was previously well known as Wynyard Point, just out past Silo Park. And it's just a highly degraded environment from over 100 years of urbanization and industrialization that's going to be regenerated into an awesome space. And so if you had a look through this, you'd come to know that project a bit more. And then if you click on the AK Have Your Say page, you could actually have a read through the vision documents, so the documents that have been created for this project, and share some ideas and things. So that would be a good way into understanding some live interesting projects that are underway. I might just pause for a second and check if there's any questions at this point. Comments? No. Okay, great. So I think in the description of today's discussion, we shared that we'll just introduce some concepts for regenerative project management and some of the skills that you might be able to practice if you're wanting to maybe get into this industry or just you know, improve in this area. So I'll just double check. Can you see my Miro at this point? Because this is probably, yeah, okay, good. Great. So I've just included like our done regenerative project management they're kind of principles, but they're quite active principles. They're things that we you know, principles can sometimes be quite high level, but these are sort of things that we just practice all the time and influence the way that we work. So there are 7 of them. I'll see how we go with time, but it'll just give you some ideas of some of the things that go into regenerative practice from our perspective. So the first principle is maybe possibly a bit of a weird one, but it's really relevant at the moment, I think, at the beginning of November, when things are starting to get that pre-Christmas rush sort of freak out happening. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, regenerative projects are often going to work on environments where there's some significant sort of harm or degradation that's taken place. And so sometimes you can be working with communities that have quite an attachment to that environment and maybe have even generations of kind of hurt attached to the fact that it's ended up in that state. And so the reason why, you know, self-care and development is our first active principle is because if you're not really looking after yourself very well, I find that I'm not very well prepared to engage in collaboration with people who you need to do this work. So yeah, sorry. I'll come back to that question in a second. But so our principles have a whakatauki connected to each of them, and this really refers to sort of the idea that you'll get the best results if you kind of are refreshed and have good peace of mind. So one of the things that I do to practice in this area is I have Wednesday non-working day, which is really great. And I just included a couple of pictures of that day. So at the moment, my son Max and I are doing a thing called maunga tours, where we are visiting the different tupuna maunga throughout Tamaki and just like walking up those, which is I'm pretty proud of because, you know, he's 2 tomorrow. So there's a bit of weight to carry up the hill. But so that's just I took this video to prove we were on a maunga, and then I took another one to prove that he was having a good time because, you kind of didn't get it coming across there, but there are lots of different ways, that people can practice self-care. But for me, that Wednesday is really critical. I go really, really hard for 2 days, and then I get kind of really refreshed and energized by my Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday can go back to it again. But also kind of this what do we call it? Maungatu is also just being outside and connecting with nature and things like that, which is also helpful to the work. I'll just come back to this question a bit later, but thank you to the person who popped it there. The next, people could potentially include some ideas about ways that you can implement self-care, but it's quite a personal one, so understand if nothing pops up there. The other thing to point out, though, is that it's not just about care, it's about development as well. And so, yeah, just always increasing your kind of capacity to better serve the communities that you're working with. So that's through things like just normal training and development, but making it quite relevant to the things that you're working on. Any questions about that? No. And then the second principle is just about team care and development. And this whakatauki really talks to about how if a person is cared for in their community, then they're going to be able to care for the community as well, or contribute to society. So this one, if you want to develop skills in kind of team care and development, there's similar skills to just looking after your own friend relationships. Some of the things that are really important to me are keeping in touch with people when I don't need something from them. So something that can sometimes happen in our industry is that you sort of see the phone ring and you haven't heard from someone for a while, and realize that it's favor related. And so I just find it's a good idea to kind of maintain relationships even when there's nothing needed for yourself at that time. I find that to be quite a helpful thing. Another skill to develop in team care is just kind of really just reading the room and being aware of what people have happening for them, and sometimes taking pause before maybe honing in on someone about a missed deadline or something. I usually find that if you ask a question first, there are sick kids or something else involved, and it's just always good to kind of work with this principle of mind of caring for each other. But just remind myself what photos. So this photo, in terms of team development, is that this is related to the work for Te Whakaoranga o Te Puhinui, and also the project within that, Te Akarata, is that this is all different members of our in our project team, but also the broader community. We're all kind of working on Te Whakaoranga o Te Puhinui together. This was a capacity building session, or like a development session, about native plant identification and the purposes of different plants. And it was awesome. Like, it's something that was run by one of our broader just team heroes, Charmaine, and it's a group of people that are really, really, really kind of skilled and senior in different areas, and coming together, just learning the things that we didn't know and how much we needed to increase our capacity and capability in this area was quite funny. They broke us into different groups, and I was in the group that was the under 15s. Like, I knew less than 15 native plants when I was actually looking at them. So I was like, yeah, I needed to be buddied up with the better end of the group. So just doing things like that, where you identify the areas that your project or program can really benefit from collective training, is just one of the things there. I'll just zoom out and see if any other questions or anything popped up. No? Any questions about that one? No. Okay, so the third is regenerative design thinking, which is pretty key. And yeah, the whakatauki connection just connected to this just talked just really about renewal, but it's a metaphor about how when one frond perishes, another one grows in its place. and this is just, yeah, really central to regenerative design thinking and regenerative practice. So a few of the things that you can do to develop in this area, I think I put some links into different trainings that you could do. So one is the regenerative practitioner series that I mentioned that I did when we started Done. That was a really valuable, I mean, that's where this all sort of comes from. So that was super central for me. Another really good training, which I think provides a really broad, helps you build a really broad understanding of sort of built environment and connected natural environment, sort of sustainability and regenerative principles, is run by the Living Future Institute of Australia. So that's connected to the organisation that started things like the Living Building Challenge, but the Living Future Institute of Australia has created an accreditation that's more relevant to Australia and New Zealand. So it's across both. I help, what do you call it? Run it, facilitate it. So it covers both of our kind of local contexts, which is quite helpful. And then there's lots of other free online courses that help you build a broad understanding of sustainability and regeneration sort of principles. And I've just popped a link into an example of one of those. Those are really good for, I find, if you start working on a project that has something really specialized about it, and you just need to do a deep dive so that you can keep up with some of the engineers or things like that. I find free online courses to be quite helpful with that, because I guess in project management, you don't really need to be a specialist at anything, but you sort of do need to be able to have a good broad understanding to be able to kind of hold everything together and keep everything moving forward. And then just mention for those who are still studying that there are papers that are beginning to offer content about regenerative practice. I know that AUT has started running a paper in connection to Te Whakaoranga o Te Puni. So if you kind of keep out and a look out for some of those keywords if you're interested in this area. Another way to disciples, sorry, that's supposed to be other disciplines, but look at other disciplines. So things like landscape architecture, if you're studying architecture, just to kind of build your expand what it is that you're doing. I'll change that later. Any questions about that? Regenerative design thinking?
Thank you.
No? Okay. The next area that it could be really helpful to develop if you're interested in regenerative practice is systems thinking. So this whakatoki is just really about how everything is connected. So the sky, whenua, moana, so land, waters, and people are all connected. And that's the thinking behind systems thinking. It's really, really central to regenerative practice, because regenerative practice follows the thinking that, we're all part of an ecosystem, people and place. And so anything that you do or don't do is going to affect another part of that system. And a couple of, so I've popped in a couple of different examples of systems mapping up here. So one of the things that you can practice the skill of is just systems mapping as you come into new situations and projects and programs and kaupapa. So this is just one that I started when I had a new contract. It was related to this one. That's right, Waiahua work streams, which was connected to these two other things. And so as I started to meet people, I just kind of popped into middle different, how they were all connected and how they were working across different things so that I could come to know the place. So that's like a not flash example. And then a couple of more polished examples come from the link that I shared earlier. But you can map things like place map the place. So this was this is the whole catchment that is covered by Te Whakaoranga Te Puhinui. And then the project Te Akarata that we're working on is just like a small part of this. I think I included no, I didn't include a systems map of that, but you can also map the relationships between different parts of a kaupapa and how they all connect to each other. So in this kaupapa, there are like 15 strategic initiatives and then multiple subsequent sub-initiatives that are connected as well. And so understanding how they all relate to each other was something that was helpful for us in this kaupapa. And then also systems mapping people, so kind of your place, and then how all of the different groups connect to each other as well, is just another way of kind of mapping systems. So yeah, I guess the skills to develop in that area or practice in that area are just learning to identify and map systems, probably in a not flash way, as you just come to think in that way, and it just helps to build the appreciation for how everything is connected. And another thing that you can do is if you're in this position, if you're kind of early on, or you have some say in the things that you're involved in your job, is if you have the opportunity to work on things that are at different scales. So say, for example, a single project, a single building that's on a very defined site, and then maybe a bigger, if you were able to work on a bigger program, you'd be able to kind of get an appreciation for what happens at that smaller scale, what happens at the bigger scale in a program, or maybe a bigger infrastructure project that has smaller parts would be a good way of kind of building up that systems thinking as well. I feel like we're probably maybe not doing that well for time now. Hey, I could stop for questions and things if that's better. What do you think, Amanda? Just after some guidance, because we've got maybe 10 minutes left, should I stop for questions or just keep going through the rest?
I think you've had a couple of questions put there about, is this the sort of work that is mostly done in private or more public type ventures? It certainly seems to be not your standard project management process. There's a lot more nurturing, a lot more holistic thinking around this. So how do you bring people along with you in this type of process?
Yeah, I guess so. To answer the question, we have a mixture of private and public clients. I'm just reflecting on whether I think it's actually more kind of public sector work that is interested in this way of thinking, possibly because there are often really big kind of kaupapa and big challenges to address, and sometimes bigger teams as well that need like a regenerative approach to bringing everyone together. I guess I could jump to the final one to answer your question, Amanda, which was about how you bring people along with you. So our 7th kind of active principle is about preparation to enable meaningful collaboration. And again, the whakatauki is just about like preparing kind of early on. So it's actually about firewood, but preparing earlier on so that kind of your future self thanks you. I think sometimes that there is a misconception about regenerative practice that you just need to meet often, like all stay connected. And sometimes that can become quite expensive and inefficient as well. So that's why specifically the 7th principle is about preparation to enable meaningful collaboration. Because it's not always that you can just get people into a room and that it's, especially if you're bringing together a lot of people, multiple stakeholders that are connected to something, that it's going to go particularly well. So what I provided in here to describe this was actually my planning for today. And it was to refer to one of the frameworks that we look at in the regenerative practice training as well, just to give you like a bit of an idea, a bit of a taster. But so instead, I use this all the time, like daily. This is one of the frameworks that I use, and it's called A5 communication. And if you're setting up for a connection with, could be even just one person, but usually it's for multiple people. It's just different checks for what it is that you're kind of setting up. And so the first, well, we didn't actually, because the Zoom thing didn't work, I wasn't able to play music, but the first A1 is about setting up the atmosphere. And online, I think this is really important because you often hear people say things like, oh, sorry, I'm in back-to-backs, like I haven't had lunch, I haven't been to the bathroom, that sort of thing. It's becoming really, really common, and it's not very conducive to a very effective hui online a lot of the time. So an idea there is to sort of, I mean, it depends what group you're working with. It was okay for today to sort of play music to set a different atmosphere, but sometimes it might just be, if you're online, setting up interactive boards like this so that people don't feel like they're just sitting and listening again, or setting up a session to start 10 minutes after the hour so that people have time to have like lunch breaks and things like that. So just setting up the right atmosphere, setting up awareness is like in Aotearoa often have, setting aside time for karakia to like clear the space is quite important, is super important. Is I feel weird now going into hui when that doesn't happen. And checking in, I tried, but everyone was eating lunch and that's fine, but trying to check in with everyone who's present and just kind of check in on that mental awareness at the beginning so that you kind of know what you're dealing with. If you're in a smaller setting, that's what I think is important about kind of like just check in, question, in case you can kind of pick up that something's particularly not working well for someone, and you can just be a bit of aware of it for the rest of the hui if everyone does turn their camera on and say hi and then someone doesn't. And then A3 is about aims, so just sharing at the beginning of the session what the purpose was, and maybe if there was like a target audience in the case of a presentation, or just what it was that you wanted to get out of today, so people are aware of that before you get into it. And then you actually get into kind of the action, and at the end you set up time for audit. So that's just an example of like, how do you bring people along with you? I think it's through quite active preparation and not sort of like regenerative practice or collaboration by just setting frequent meeting invites and hoping that that results in better outcomes. Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments or thoughts?
Katrina, I think, has made a comment in there in the chat, which thank you. Saying the work you do sounds amazing. Are the regenerative aspects of your work more community focused, as in community ownership, or ecologically focused, as in regenerative built outcomes?
I don't know if it's slanted. They're both, I mean, you'd know in asking that question. It sounds like, are working in this area as well or something, but they're so connected, so it's kind of hard to say. I don't think that it's leaning more in one direction than another at the moment. It's more that we're looking to have regenerative built outcomes through community work and through community ownership and things. So they're pretty hard to pick apart in the work we're involved in currently. Thank you for your question. I appreciate it. Love your mahi, Sam. What other consultant groups do you typically interact with during the initial phase of these programs? Yeah, great question there, caller. No, I love that. In the early phase of these programs and projects, let me think how it's different to anything else. Any other consultant groups? I guess in addition to the sort of standard ones, on the projects we're working on at the moment, landscape architects are a lot more prominent than some other disciplines because they're, because you're looking at not necessarily just a building, but looking at kind of whole sites and urban areas and things. Oh, thank you, Liz. Appreciate that. Some of the other people that come on a bit earlier than you might expect. Ecologists, mana whenua specialists come into our teams quite early on as well. So mana whenua have a few specialists that they really love working with that have mātauranga Māori expertise that come into projects pretty early. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's been absolutely brilliant, and we probably do need to bring it to a close because I think we said we were going to finish about 1:15, but I think that was because we had a small technical difficulty. So I do appreciate everyone's patience with us, and I do apologise. The joys of using technology, it is amazing to make everything work, except sometimes when it doesn't. So thank you, Sam, for helping us clear the air and be able to focus on something that has a completely different way of thinking. And I feel it's a much more, well, maybe it's my misunderstanding, but I just think very interactive type process and a very engaging process, where I think you also share a lot of the responsibility with groups, and it's not just one or maybe two people who are leading who hold all of the power, the responsibility for a project to be successful. So thank you for sharing that. And I think your Miro page is going to be up for a little while longer. So people, you're very welcome to go back into that and have a look at it. Use some of those links. Make sure that you look at that sort of future training opportunities as well. I think one of the big things we like to think about with Keystone Talks is it's about building that innate curiosity that we all have in our sector, and about how do we lift our game, how do we improve and do better for not just ourselves but also our clients. So look, thank you. I think there were many students who joined us as well for this, and yes, I did manage to find the record button, so if it works I will hopefully share that with you all. But hey, this is one Luddite who's going to have to go back to school, I think, how to make things work. But thank you, Sam. Absolutely a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. And the link for Miro, what we will do is we will send that out to everybody who's registered today. So it's there, and then you can use it afterwards. Okay. Thank you. And perhaps, Sam, I know you started with a lovely hokara here. Would you like to finish and just provide us with closure before we enter back into our work streams?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, everyone. Really appreciated today. It was a lot of fun, and I hope that my intention was to try and be a little bit, just sort of straightforward about things. And so if there is anything on the medal board that you have questions about, feel free to pop it in, and I'll just keep an eye on it, or that sort of thing. So anyway, I'll close. Tuia ki te rangi, tuia ki te whenua, tuia ki te moana, tuia ki te heringa tangata, ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao. Tihei, Māori ora.
Thank you. Kia ora, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sam.